guys, and welcome to the Sunderland vs Millwall match preview. So Sunderland do finally head back to the Stadium Light on Saturday. They'll be welcoming Millwall, who are in sort of indifferent form at the moment. If you do have a look at Millwall, first off, last couple of games they did beat Cardiff, they beat Leicester, which is brilliant, but then before that they lose to teams at Huddersfield and Rotherham. So it really does depend what Millwall are going to turn up at the Stadium Light. They do have threats of their own. I say this every time I do a preview. At the moment you've got Obafemi up top, who I don't think he scored many this season at all, but last time out, he always has that threat of his pace. He got himself a goal last time out as well. And we know what Millwall do. They're a very physical, hard-working side. That's always been sort of inbuilt to every Millwall side we seem to play. That's their sort of general basics, hard work and sort of graft. So it's going to be a hard one. It always is, and again, I always say that as well. Now for us, in terms of team news, Mike Dodds did address the media yesterday. A couple of updates. Rusyn, it's sort of hit and miss as to whether we'll even see him before the end of the season. Sirkin is on the pitch, he's on the training pitch, but again, he's one who's been out for a hell of a long time. Whether we'll see him, I don't know whether he said potentially Sheff Wednesday. Last game of the season, maybe a goal or a target for him, but again, not too sure. Evans, he seemed like he was on his way back, but then he had a bit of a flare-up last week. So there's still a lot of injuries. And also, apparently, again, this is just a massive rumour. There's nothing been mentioned by the club at all, but there's a big rumour that was going around on different forums that Dan Neil is out. And with that rumour came suggestions that he might be heading to London to see if he's, to sort of get it checked out. I don't know if it was an ankle injury or a lower leg injury or whatever it was. He could potentially be out, and he's going down to London to see the extent of the injury, whether it needs surgery or not. But again, it was a massive rumour. However, I have done my preferred 11 accordingly, just in case it is true. I hope to God it isn't true. But for us at the moment, it's all about heading into the end of the season on the most positive note as humanly possible. That's all we can do, and that's all we want. I've seen a lot of suggestions for some of the young lads in there from the youth squads to be given a chance, and I do agree to an extent. However, I just don't think that would mismatch well with what Dodds wants to do. Dodds wants to go into these last few games with every game we want to try and go and win, and that's not to say that the youngsters won't do well, but I think if he just starts to experiment too much, which he has alluded to, if he doesn't want to use this as an experiment, a time to experiment, because it just doesn't pay the respect that these games deserve. And again, there are some young lads in the youth side that I do think do look really, really good at the moment. Tommy Watson being the key one that a lot of people have been mentioning, and I have seen him play a handful of times, actually, or a few times, should I say. And he does look like a decent player, and he does have that sort of air of Jack Clark. Of course, nowhere near to that calibre yet, but I think it's just like the hairstyle, his running style, his movement, the way he weaves in between defenders. He does look like an exciting talent. However, I think a lot of people, they just see the clips and the highlights, and again, this isn't me putting that down at all. It's just I've watched quite a lot of the youth sides this season in particular, and the only play that really stuck out for me throughout, every time he did play in there anyway, was Rig. Rig stuck out like a sore thumb, whereas there was plenty of times this season where no one else really did stick out at all. Watson, as of recently, he's definitely earned the right to be spoken about in the same breath of being in the matchday squad in the first team because of how good he has looked. But other than those little clips, if you look at the off the ball, and if you look at the whole games from a 90-minute perspective, he can fade away, and he does just look like a boy, and he does seem to fit in with that. And I know I say he looks like a boy, but what I mean is with Rig, even though he's just as young, he stuck out like a sore thumb. He dominates the play, whereas Watson, he can just kind of blend in. He doesn't look like he's too out of place, if that makes sense. And again, that's not me being too harsh. I just don't want, because he's in a rich vein of form at the moment in the youth setup, I don't want that to immediately put, right, let's go chuck him into the first team and see what happens. Of course, I like young players to get opportunities, but I just don't want us to overhype a player. We've done that a lot. And then what comes with that is when he doesn't sort of hit the ground running immediately, it comes with a lot of backlash, and that's what I just like to try and protect our youth players in that sense. But he definitely looks like a player for the future, 100%. And I wouldn't be totally against, last couple of games of the season, maybe bringing him on for the final 5 minutes of a game or just having him on the bench, just to give him that experience. I don't want us to start hyping him up as he is the next Jack Clark. Let's give him, every game, if that makes sense anyway. I'm just... very much someone who I'd like to see us protect our youth and not get too overhyped from a couple of goals. But either way, let's get into my sort of preferred 11 for this game against Millwall. So as you can see, I've gone back to the 4 at the back, and the only reason I've done that is because Marty Dodds, he did slip up in the pre-match presser. He said the term, he used the term 4 at the back, and then it got the question, the journalist who was questioning him, he did actually say, oh, so you're playing 4 at the back then this week, and you're going back to a 4 at the back, you're not doing a 5. And he said, oh, did I say that? So he kind of slips up. So I don't know whether that actually means anything, but I believe he will go to a 4 at the back at home. And as you can see, I put Alessi in from the start. He's came off the bench recently. And even if he just has a half or has 60 minutes, I'd like to see Alessi start in a back 4, because I think that's probably our strongest back 4 as is. With Patterson in goal, Alessi, O'Nien, Ballard and Hume. I'd love to see that back 4. Now, I've only done Ekwett and Rigg in the middle, and that's just going off the presumption that Dan Neil is out. I'm not too sure whether he is. I wouldn't put a bet on it personally, but he may be. You just never know. These rumours sometimes do come to fruition. But if that is the case, I will put Rigg in there. And I'm actually excited by that. Of course, not excited at the fact of Dan Neil being injured, but excited to see Rigg in the middle, because I keep screaming about it, and I know that you guys are probably fed up with it. But Rigg is a central midfielder. He's an attacking one. He definitely can play as a more forward-thinking midfielder, but he isn't a winger. He isn't necessarily number 10. Whenever I've watched him, he's always in the middle and he dominates, and I'd love to see him in there. So that would be a good opportunity for him with Ekwett alongside. Preferably, I'd like to see Dan Neil and Rigg in the middle. That's what I want to see in the future. But if that is the case, this is what I'd like to see. Clark on one side, Roberts on the other. I know Roberts has had a horrible season, but I would prefer Roberts to start. Please, just to try and get him some kind of form, hopefully, before the end of the season. Al-Shish, I'd stick him in there as well with Jobe up top. I put Jobe up top because he's the only player who looks remotely threatening at the moment when we do have him up top. He's incredibly inconsistent, but it is what it is. So that is a lineup I would go with the sort of question marks over Dan Neil and the sort of presumption that we're going to have a 4 at the back as well. But let me know in the comments down below who you would go with this weekend. Now, in terms of my score predictions, it's going to be a boring one for me, but I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I just think we don't know what Millwall is going to turn up. If we go with a 5 at the back, I think we just look very, very solid. And I think that could easily be a 0-0, or maybe we'd scrape 1-0 like we've seen in recent weeks. However, I don't think we're going to do that. So I do think we are going to concede at least 1. And with the 4 at the back, I think we're always going to be at risk of that. But I do think we're going to have enough to get one back at the stage of my life. We've come off the back with a little bit of a decent run of form, so the fans will be on side. And, when the fans are on side at the stage of my life, it's a very difficult place to come for certain teams. But we're going to expect a difficult side in Millwall. But I think we will draw this game. We'll get ourselves a point at the stage of my life with hopefully a decent performance, 1-1. That is what I'm going to go with. But either way, that is my preview done. What do you guys think the score's going to be? The team news, what would you go with? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you have enjoyed, hit the like button for me. It'd be massively, massively appreciated. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already to become a fully fledged member of the SUNDERLAND Army. But for now, take care and stay jammy.